Most people think the first sign of dementia is a misplaced set of keys or a forgotten name. They are wrong. The real decline starts the moment you open your eyes and decide not to move. And if you are over 60, the next 12 minutes of this video are going to give you something no pharmaceutical on earth can currently match: a specific, research-backed sequence that cuts your cognitive decline risk by nearly half. It takes less than 20 minutes. It costs nothing. And it works because of what your brain is doing right now before your first cup of coffee that almost nobody has ever explained to you properly. Stay with this. The first thing I am going to tell you is going to sound too simple to matter. That is exactly why almost nobody does it. You already know dementia is something you want to avoid. Except you have probably seen what it does, maybe up close, in someone you loved, someone who used to be sharp and present and then slowly was not. And at some point, quietly, you started wondering whether that is where you are headed to. That is not fear talking, that is intelligence. That is your brain doing exactly what it is supposed to do, scanning ahead for threats while there is still time to change the outcome. Here is what most people have never been told. Dementia risk does not build slowly and evenly like rust spreading across a pipe. It builds in windows, specific periods of the day where your brain is either repairing itself or falling further behind. And the largest of those windows, the one with the most influence over whether your memory stays intact into your 70s and 80s, opens within the first 30 minutes of waking up. What you do in that window is not just habit, it is biology. And right now, most seniors are spending that window in exactly the wrong way. You know, that specific heaviness in the first hour of the morning, not just tiredness, something thicker than that mental fog where you stare at the coffee maker for 3 seconds too long, waiting for your brain to plug in. That feeling where your thoughts are wading through something slow and resistant, where you walk into a room and stand there blinking, genuinely unable to remember what brought you there. And for just a second, something cold passes through you. Because you wonder if that is the beginning of something you cannot stop. That is not just aging. That is the physical sensation of your brain's overnight drainage system being backed up. And once you understand what is actually happening in those moments, you will never spend that morning window the same way again. For decades, the standard advice for brain health in older adults has been the same. Stay socially active. Do crossword puzzles. Take your fish oil. Walk 30 minutes a day. And none of that is wrong, but it is incomplete in a way that has genuinely cost people. Here is the deeper problem. The retirement culture built up over the last 50 years has been quietly selling you an idea that the golden years are for slowing down, long, still mornings, a recliner, the news on in the background, rest, you earned it. Yeah, take it easy. And that advice, well-intentioned as it is, has been doing your brain real damage, because it is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of how the aging brain actually works. Most of that conventional wisdom treats brain health like a maintenance problem, like you are trying to keep something from degrading, but the brain is not a static organ that slowly wears down. It is a dynamic system that is either building or retreating every single day. And the question of which direction it moves is being answered primarily by your biology, not your puzzles, and not your rest. Let me introduce you to something called the glymphatic system. While you sleep, your brain runs a cleaning cycle. For the glymphatic system, think of it as a dedicated drainage network built specifically for your brain, flushes out metabolic waste products that accumulate during the day. One of the most important of those waste products is a protein called amyloid beta. You may have heard that name before. It is the primary compound associated with Alzheimer's disease. Your brain produces it naturally. The glymphatic system's job is to clear it out before it builds up into the plaques that damage neural tissue. This cleaning cycle runs almost exclusively during deep sleep, and by the time you wake up, it is in its final stage. Here is where the villain enters. The glymphatic system does not stop working the moment you open your eyes. It tapers. It needs a specific physiological signal to complete its final flush, to dump the last of the overnight waste and close the cycle cleanly. And that signal has to come from you. When it does not come, when you reach for your phone, scroll in the dark, sit still through the morning news, let the stillness of sleep carry forward into the stillness of waking. The cleaning cycle closes without finishing. The amyloid beta that should have been cleared out stays day after day, year after year, not a dramatic single event, a slow accumulation, invisible until it is not. That is the real villain, not age, not genetics alone. The sedentary morning, quietly backed by our decades of well-meaning advice about rest, holding the drain closed at the exact moment your brain most needs it open. Before I give you the protocol, I want to plant three things in your mind. First, a 2023 analysis of cognitive aging patterns across Mediterranean rural populations found that certain communities with high-fat traditional diets showed dramatically lower rates of dementia than would be predicted by their nutritional profiles alone. The variable that kept appearing was not what they ate. It was what they did in the first hour after waking. Why? Second, there is a specific biological event that happens in the first 15 minutes after you open your eyes, which researchers have started calling the post-wake activation window. Most brain health content ignores it entirely. Your sleep quality, your supplements, your diet, all of it is being partially undermined if this window is missed. What happens in it? Third, there is one thing most seniors consume within minutes of waking that, taken in the wrong order, directly interferes with the glymphatic system's ability to complete its flush. You almost certainly do this every morning. What is it? All three of those questions have answers, and by the end of this video, you will have all of them. Here is where I want to slow down, because the 50% figure in the title of this video deserves to be treated seriously, not thrown around casually. The FINGER trial, the Finnish geriatric intervention study to prevent cognitive impairment and disability, is one of the largest and most rigorous dementia prevention studies ever conducted. It followed over 1,200 older adults across multiple years, testing the impact of targeted lifestyle intervention on cognitive decline. The results showed that structured, specific lifestyle changes reduced the rate of cognitive deterioration by approximately 40 to 50%, even in participants who carried elevated genetic risk factors for Alzheimer's. 40 to 50%. In people already considered high risk, that is not a footnote. That is the whole story. And I want to be honest with you about something here, because I think you deserve that. The science on dementia prevention is genuinely promising, but it is not fully settled. We do not yet completely understand why some people follow every evidence-based protocol and still experience decline. The brain is extraordinarily complex, and anyone who offers you a complete map of how dementia works is either decades ahead of the entire field or is oversimplifying. What I can tell you is that the three habits in this protocol are each supported by peer-reviewed research and their combination reflects the current best understanding from institutions that are not trying to sell you anything. This is not a cure. It is the most powerful risk reduction strategy available to you right now without a prescription. The first thing you should do every morning, before your phone, before coffee, ideally within 5 minutes of waking, is expose your eyes to natural light. Not bright indoor light, natural light. Outside or beside an open window if weather makes outside difficult. 2 to 5 minutes is enough. You are not trying to get a tan. You are sending a signal. Here is what that signal does. Your brain has a master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, that regulates nearly every hormonal and neurological process in your body, including the production of something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. It is sometimes called the brain's fertilizer. It supports the growth of new neurons and the survival of existing ones. Low BDNF is consistently associated with accelerated cognitive decline. Morning natural light is the primary trigger for BDNF production. Not your phone screen, not overhead lighting, natural light, or a clinical-grade light therapy lamp if you live somewhere with limited morning sun. 2 to 5 minutes, every morning. That is the first piece. Now, here is where most videos on this topic would stop, and honestly, if morning light were the whole answer, it would already be worth changing your routine for, but light is only the first layer, because here is what the light research alone does not explain, why some people who do get consistent morning light still show accelerated cognitive decline in their 70s. If light was sufficient on its own, that pattern would not exist. The answer has to do with what is happening at the cellular and fluid level. And this is where the morning protocol becomes something genuinely different from anything you have been told before. Your brain is approximately 73% water. You have probably heard that. What most people have not been told is that the overnight dehydration that accumulates during 7 or 8 hours of sleep creates a measurable reduction in cognitive processing speed that can take up to 90 minutes to fully reverse, and only if you drink enough water at the right time. The right time is within the first 15 minutes of waking. Not coffee first, water first. And the amount matters more than most people realize. Research points to between 400 and 500 milliliters, roughly 1.5 to 2 standard glasses consumed in that early window as the threshold for meaningful cognitive rehydration. Here is the answer to the third question from earlier, the one about what most seniors consume within minutes of waking that interferes with the glymphatic flush. It is coffee. Not because coffee is harmful, because coffee is a diuretic, and when it is the first thing you consume, you are pulling fluid away from the cerebrospinal system at the exact moment it most needs hydration to complete the overnight drainage cycle. You are interrupting the cleaning process right at the finish line. Water first, then coffee. That single sequencing change made consistently makes a measurable biological difference. We are just past the halfway point, and I want to remind you that the third habit, the one coming in the next few minutes, is the one that most directly addresses amyloid beta accumulation. The light primes the system. The water makes it available. The third habit is what actively drives the flush to completion. It is also the one that is going to surprise you most, because the research behind it overturned an assumption that scientists held for years about the aging body. Keep going. The third habit is movement, but not the kind you are probably imagining. You do not need a run. You do not need a gym. You do not need anything that strains, hurts, or requires changing your clothes. What the research on dementia prevention specifically points to is low-intensity rhythmic movement performed within 20 minutes of waking, lasting between 7 and 12 minutes. A slow walk around your garden or down your street and back. If walking is difficult, gentle seated leg raises or slow arm circles achieve a meaningful portion of the same effect. Here is the mechanism. Rhythmic movement in the morning triggers the release of a molecule called irisin from muscle tissue. Irisin crosses the blood-brain barrier. Once inside the brain, it directly stimulates BDNF production, the same brain fertilizer triggered by morning light, and it has been shown in multiple peer-reviewed studies to reduce amyloid beta plaque formation, not slow it, reduce it. The combination of morning light and morning movement creates a synergistic effect on BDNF that neither habit achieves alone. The water makes the glymphatic system available to clear what the movement helps dislodge. The three habits are not separate recommendations stacked together. They are a single biological sequence: light, water, movement, in that order, before anything else. Here is what most people in this space will not tell you. The research on irisin and amyloid beta came primarily from studies on younger adults for a long time. Scientists assumed the protective effect would be weaker in older populations because muscle mass declines with age, and irisin is produced by muscle tissue. Less muscle, less irisin, less benefit. That was the assumption. What the research actually found was the opposite. In adults over 60, the irisin response to low-intensity morning movement is stronger relative to the amount of movement performed than it is in younger adults. The aging brain appears to be more sensitive to irisin signaling, not less, which means the people who stand to benefit most from this specific morning habit are exactly the people who have been told the least about it. Your biology right now is more responsive to this intervention than a 35-year-old's, not less, more. That changes the calculation entirely. Think about what has just become clear. Your brain runs its most important maintenance cycle while you sleep. That cycle does not stop the moment you wake. It finishes, or fails to finish, based on what you do in the next 30 minutes. Morning light starts the hormonal sequence your brain needs to build and protect neurons. Water completes the fluid infrastructure the glymphatic system needs to clear overnight waste. Movement triggers the one molecule shown to directly reduce amyloid accumulation, and in your age group, that response is amplified, not diminished. None of this requires a prescription. None of this requires equipment. None of this requires the kind of willpower most people do not have at 7 in the morning. It requires 20 minutes. A window of light, a glass of water, a short walk. You already sensed somewhere that mornings mattered. You just did not know exactly why or exactly how. Now you do. And you arrived at it yourself, one layer at a time. The people who will start this tomorrow morning are not the ones most frightened of dementia. Fear is actually a poor motivator for consistent habit change. The behavioral research is clear on that. The people who will do this are the ones who have decided that the quality of their mind in their 70s and 80s is something they are actively constructing right now, not waiting for, building, day by day, morning by morning. That is a different kind of person. That is someone who treats their own brain with the same seriousness they would give any long-term investment. Because that is exactly what it is. And if that is who you are or who you are deciding to become, this is the channel built for you. Because this is where the research that actually reaches you lives, not filtered down to 11 minutes in a waiting room, not watered down for liability, not buried in a journal nobody reads. Your brain does not just think, it washes itself. And right now, you have been leaving the faucet off. Start tomorrow, not next week, tomorrow, before your phone, before your coffee, 2 to 5 minutes of natural light, 1.5 glasses of water, 7 minutes of slow movement. That is the morning your brain has been waiting for. There is one more layer to this story that we have not touched yet, and it is the answer to the first question from earlier about why those Mediterranean communities show such dramatically lower dementia rates. The answer has nothing to do with diet. It has to do with what happens to the brain during a specific kind of midday rest that most Western health advice has spent 50 years actively discouraging. That is the next video. For now, tell me in the comments what your first 30 minutes actually look like right now. Not what you wish they looked like. What they actually look like. Because your answer might reveal something more important than you expect.